The words that stopped the embassy. The galactic embassy shimmered above the blue glow of a distant world, a floating fortress of light and politics. Inside its massive silver halls, thousands of alien species gathered, each representing their homeworlds, their cultures, and their pride. The air was filled with the sound of translators whispering, wings fluttering, and mechanical voices debating laws that could shape galaxies. At the center of the grand chamber stood Captain Ryan Hale, a young human diplomat from Earth. He had come as part of a small delegation, a symbol of humanity's growing presence among the stars. Humans were still considered newcomers, brash, emotional, and unpredictable to most alien species. Humans were fascinating but dangerous, creatures ruled by heart more than reason. Across the hall sat Queen Seraphine of Varelia, ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, her eyes glowed faintly violet, and her presence demanded silence. Even the strongest warriors bowed their heads when she entered. She was feared, admired, and almost worshipped by many. The meeting was supposed to be peaceful, a diplomatic discussion on trade routes and defense agreements. But when the Queen herself entered, everything changed. Ryan had never seen anything like her. She moved with a strange mix of power and grace. Her long silver robes flowed like starlight, her steps echoing softly across the marble floor. He didn't mean to speak aloud, but his human mind, filled with curiosity and honesty, betrayed him. As the Queen passed by his seat, he whispered under his breath, "She's impossibly beautiful." The translator chip caught it, amplified it, and repeated it in the Queen's own language. Every being in the room froze. The words hung in the air like a weapon. Dozens of guards raised their energy spears. Aiming straight at the human, the crowd gasped. The sound of the Queen's name rippled through the hall in a dozen alien tongues. Ryan felt his blood turn cold. He hadn't meant disrespect, but in most galactic cultures, commenting on a ruler's body was a grave insult, a punishable crime. Queen Seraphine stopped walking. Her glowing eyes turned toward him. The hall became silent enough to hear the hum of the life support systems. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. He could see his reflection in her silver eyes. He expected death, but instead of anger, she tilted her head slightly, studying him. The faintest curve appeared on her lips, not quite a smile, but not rage either. "Repeat that." Her voice echoed through the translator systems, deep and melodic. "What did you just say, human?" Ryan swallowed hard. His training screamed to apologize, to stay silent, but something about her tone, curious, not furious, made him answer honestly. "I said, 'You are beautiful, Your Majesty.'" Gasps filled the hall. Some aliens covered their faces, others whispered, "The human is mad." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing, then she stepped closer. Each step echoed like thunder in the hall. The guards followed, their weapons still glowing. Ryan stood his ground, refusing to look away. When she stopped before him, the room seemed smaller. The scent of strange flowers filled the air around her. Her voice was softer now, almost amused. "Humans speak their minds without fear," she said, "even before death." Ryan blinked, unsure if it was an insult or a compliment. We value truth," he said quietly, "even when it's dangerous." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, studying his face as if she were seeing something unfamiliar. "Truth," she repeated, as if tasting the word. Then she turned to her guards. "Lower your weapons." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. The guards hesitated, but the Queen's tone left no room for argument. The spears lowered. Ryan exhaled shakily. His knees almost gave out. The entire embassy seemed to breathe again. But the Queen wasn't finished. She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "Human," she said, "you will come to my chambers after this assembly." The hall erupted in whispers. No one had ever heard of a human being summoned privately by the Queen. Ryan's fellow diplomats stared at him in horror. He had just spoken about the Queen's body in public, and now she was calling him to meet her alone. As the Queen turned and continued her walk, Ryan could feel every eye in the room following him. Some with pity, some with envy, some with suspicion. He didn't know if he'd just been forgiven, or chosen for something far more dangerous. Outside the massive windows, the stars burned bright and silent. Watching the strange new story begin, the words he had spoken would echo across the galaxy, forever remembered as the words that stopped the embassy, the Queen's unspoken interest. The corridors of the galactic embassy stretched like rivers of silver and glass, silent except for the echo of Ryan's footsteps. Every diplomat he passed turned away or whispered behind their hands. Some pitied him, others looked afraid. Everyone believed he was walking toward his execution. 2 royal guards waited at the end of the hall, tall as statues, armor shining like polished mercury. Without a word, they opened the heavy crystal doors that led into the Queen's private chamber. Ryan stepped inside, his heart pounding. The room was unlike anything he had seen. A soft blue light pulsed from the walls, alive with swirling patterns that shifted like water. At the center stood Queen Seraphine, her back turned, staring out at the endless stars beyond the glass wall. Her silver hair floated gently in the air, glowing faintly under the light. "Human," she said without turning, her voice calm. "Do you know how close you came to death today?" Ryan stopped a few steps away. "I do now," he said quietly. The Queen turned, her violet eyes glimmering with something strange. Curiosity, not anger. "You spoke of my form," she said slowly. "A dangerous act in my court, yet you spoke with no fear." "No hesitation," Ryan swallowed. "It wasn't meant as disrespect," he said. "On Earth, when we admire someone, we say it honestly." She studied him carefully, her gaze sharp and searching. "Humans are ruled by emotion," she murmured. "That is what the Council believes. They call you unpredictable, volatile, dangerous." "Maybe we are," Ryan said. "But that's what keeps us alive. Feeling things doesn't make us weak." The Queen's lips curved faintly. "You believe emotion is strength?" "I do," Ryan replied. "Because truth comes from emotion. Without it, we'd just be empty machines." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. Then she walked closer. Stopping only an arm's length away, Ryan could feel the strange warmth radiating from her. The faint scent of her perfume filled the air, metallic, cold yet somehow comforting. "Your honesty," she said softly. "It stirs something I have not felt in years." Her eyes flickered with faint light. "In my world, beauty is control, power is silence. We speak only what must be said, but you—" She tilted her head slightly. "You speak what should not be spoken, and yet it sounds right." Ryan's breath caught. "Then why bring me here?" "To understand," she said simply. "To see if the stories about your kind are true." She turned away and gestured to a floating console. It projected images, records of wars, peace treaties, and the chaos humans had brought to galactic politics. "They say humans are too emotional for diplomacy, too bold for restraint," she said. "Yet somehow, your kind wins hearts instead of battles." Ryan stepped closer. "Maybe because we don't hide what we feel," he said. "We try to connect, even when we don't understand." The Queen looked at him again, and for the first time the glow in her eyes dimmed, showing something almost human. "Sadness, connection," she whispered. "A word I have forgotten." Suddenly the room trembled. A distant explosion shook the glass. The guards outside shouted commands. The Queen's expression hardened. "They are here already," she said coldly. Ryan blinked. "Who?" "Those who believe I have been tainted by human weakness," she said. "They want to remove you and me if I protect you." Before Ryan could react, the chamber door opened. A guard entered quickly and bowed. "Your Majesty, the Council demands your presence. They say the human must be surrendered." The Queen turned to Ryan, her voice low. "You spoke of truth, Captain Hale," she said. "Let us see if your truth can survive the weight of the galaxy." Her silver robes flowed as she passed him, leaving a trail of faint light in the air. Ryan followed her into the corridor where whispers spread like wildfire. For the first time, he realized the truth. This was no longer about a careless compliment. It was about something far greater. The Queen of Varelia had taken an interest in a human, and in the cold heart of the galaxy, that single spark of curiosity could start a storm no one could stop. The embassy trembled once more as the Queen walked toward the council chamber, her guards beside her, her human shadow following close behind. The game of power, pride, and forbidden feeling had just begun. Whispers of rebellion. The council chamber was a circle of crystal towers rising into a dome of shifting light. Each seat held the leader of a species, their eyes locked on the center where Queen Seraphine stood beside the human who had shaken the galaxy with a single careless word. The silence was colder than space itself. "Your Majesty," said Councillor Dravek, his voice deep and heavy, "you risk the balance of the galaxy for one creature who cannot control his tongue." The Queen's expression didn't change. "The human spoke truth," she said calmly, And truth does not weaken power, it reveals it. Gasps and angry whispers echoed around the chamber. The council members were not used to defiance, especially from Seraphine, who had ruled through icy precision and fear for decades. But today her voice carried warmth. Even challenge. Ryan stood behind her, silent but tense. He could feel the weight of 100 alien gazes, some curious, some filled with hate. Some saw him as a fool, others as a weapon. The debate raged for hours, one by one. Voices rose demanding the human's punishment. They called him undisciplined, primitive, dangerous, but each time they spoke, the Queen defended him, not with emotion, but with reason. If we fear the words of one man, she said, perhaps we fear more than him. Perhaps we fear what truth he speaks. When the meeting ended, Ryan was escorted back to his quarters. The corridors were empty and dark, flickering with the soft blue glow of alien lamps. He knew something was wrong. The silence was too heavy, too unnatural. He tapped his communicator. Embassy Control, this is Captain Hale. Reporting unusual silence in the West Wing. No answer. He turned the corner and froze. 3 figures stood waiting in the shadows, cloaked and armed. Their weapons hummed softly. One of them hissed, "The human dies tonight." Ryan ducked as a plasma bolt seared past his head. He dove behind a column, grabbed a fallen guard's stun rod, and countered with a desperate swing. The weapon hummed as it struck one of the attackers, sending him crashing to the ground. The others closed in fast. Then the air shimmered, and a silver blur appeared. The Queen's royal guard materialized out of thin air, slicing through the assassins with precise, silent movements. In seconds, it was over. The lead guard turned to Ryan, her armor glowing. "You are under the Queen's protection," she said sharply. "Do not leave your room again without escort." Ryan caught his breath. "Who sent them?" The guard hesitated, then said quietly, "Council members loyal to the old law, they fear what you mean to her." "What I mean?" Ryan said, confused. The guard's gaze softened for a moment. "You made her feel," she said, "and feeling is forbidden for our kind." Ryan sat in silence after she left, the words echoing in his head. Feeling is forbidden. He began to understand that this wasn't just politics, it was something much deeper. Later, the Queen herself visited him, unguarded. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried exhaustion. "You were attacked," she said. "I expected this." "Expected?" Ryan asked. "Then why risk all this for me?" She looked out the window at the stars. "Because you reminded me of what I once was," she said quietly. "Before the throne, before the laws, I was free to feel." Ryan stepped closer. "Then why let them take it from you?" Her lips curved slightly, a sad smile. "Because power demands silence," she said. "But your words, your reckless honesty have broken that silence." The chamber lights dimmed, and in that half-darkness, Ryan saw something that few had ever witnessed. A single tear, glimmering silver, fell from the Queen's eye. But before either could speak, an alarm blared through the embassy. A deep red light flashed across the walls. The Queen's communicator activated. "Your Majesty," came a guard's urgent voice. "The rebellion has begun. They're targeting the embassy itself." The Queen's expression hardened. Her soft tone vanished, replaced by the steel of command. "Then prepare the royal defense," she said, turning toward Ryan. "You wanted to understand what truth means in this galaxy, Captain. Now you will see it burn." The floor trembled as explosions rippled through the lower levels. The glass above cracked with the shockwave. The embassy was no longer a hall of peace. It had become a battlefield, and as alarms screamed and soldiers raced through the corridors, one truth became clear. The words Ryan spoke had not just changed the Queen. They had changed the course of the galaxy itself. The trial of the human. The once shining halls of the galactic embassy now echoed with the distant thunder of explosions. Smoke drifted through broken corridors and the scent of ozone filled the air. Emergency lights flickered red across the glass walls, painting the scene in colors of war. In the central chamber, the Queen stood tall, surrounded by her royal guard. Her silver armor gleamed like moonlight, but her face was calm, almost cold. Beside her stood Captain Ryan Hale. Bruised, exhausted, yet unbroken, the council demanded his trial, and she had agreed, but on her own terms. The chamber filled again with representatives from 100 worlds. Their holographic symbols floated above each seat. Spinning slowly, the Counselor of Arvex Prime spoke first, his voice dripping with venom. "Your Majesty, the evidence is clear. This human's presence has brought chaos, rebellion, and death. He should be executed for the safety of all. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Ryan stood silent, his hands clasped behind his back. Every instinct told him to speak, but the Queen raised one elegant hand, silencing the room. "I summoned this gathering," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "not to destroy a man, but to expose a truth." The lights dimmed, and holograms appeared, images of the attack, soldiers in rebel insignias, ships firing on the embassy. "The rebellion was not born from his words," the Queen said. "It was born from your fear of them," a counselor hissed. "You protect the human because you are compromised." Her eyes glowed brighter. "Perhaps I am," she said, "compromised by compassion, tainted by truth, but is that not what makes us alive?" Ryan watched her, stunned. The woman who once ruled through fear was now defying her entire empire, and she was doing it because of him. The council erupted in chaos. Voices shouted, claws slammed tables. Translators broke under the noise. Ryan finally stepped forward. "Enough," he said, his voice steady. The uproar stopped instantly. He looked around, meeting the gaze of the galaxy's most powerful beings. "You call us humans dangerous because we speak our hearts," he said. "Because we feel, because we make mistakes. But you," he pointed at them, "you hide behind rules that kill anything that feels alive. You fear emotion because you've forgotten how to use it." 1,000 eyes stared. The silence stretched until the air itself felt heavy. The Queen stepped beside him, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "You see, Council," she said, "this is what makes humanity different. They may speak carelessly, but they speak truth. They may bleed easily, but they stand even when surrounded by enemies." Councillor Dravek slammed his fist. "This is blasphemy. You are corrupting our laws with human weakness." Seraphine's expression hardened. "Then perhaps your laws are the weakness." The chamber exploded into chaos again. Guards moved in, weapons drawn. But the Queen raised her hand. Energy crackled in the air, her power flooding the room. The guards froze mid-step, trapped in invisible fields of light. "I have obeyed the council for too long," she said, her voice rising. "But today I choose something greater than law. I choose to remember what it means to feel." She turned to Ryan, her glowing eyes softening. "And I choose the species that reminded me." Her declaration rang like thunder. The galaxy's oldest laws shattered in that moment. Counselors screamed, ambassadors fled, and through the confusion, Ryan felt a strange calm. He had come to apologize, and instead, he had started a revolution. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the chamber. A rebel warship appeared outside the embassy's dome, its cannons charging. The Queen's guards shouted warnings. "They're targeting the council chamber." Seraphine looked to Ryan, her voice quiet but firm. "If they want to end this with fire, then let them see our light." She raised both hands, energy spiraling from her palms like silver lightning. The dome above shattered outward, and her power met the incoming blast head-on. The explosion illuminated the entire station like a newborn sun. When the light faded, the warship was gone, turned to dust. The Queen stood breathing heavily, her armor scorched. Her crown cracked, but her gaze was steady. She turned to the council, now silent in shock. "Let this be your judgment," she said. "The age of silence is over." And with those words, she ended the trial, not with death but with rebirth. As the guards escorted the remaining counselors out, Ryan stepped closer to her. "You just made every ruler in the galaxy your enemy," he said softly. Seraphine smiled faintly. "Then let them come," she said. "For the first time, I am not alone." Outside the shattered dome, the stars burned brighter than ever, and from the wreckage of old power, something new began to rise. A fragile alliance, born from truth, defiance, and one human's reckless honesty. But in the deep reaches of space, unseen eyes were already watching, plotting, waiting for their chance to strike. The story was not over, it had only just begun. Her response shook the entire embassy. The next morning, the galactic embassy stood half in ruins and half reborn. Its broken glass halls now reflected the first light of a new era. Emergency beacons still flickered in the distance, yet the entire structure hummed with something strange. Hope. Across the central hall, thousands gathered once again. Representatives from every known world, media drones floating in the air, millions of eyes across the galaxy tuned into the live broadcast. They all waited to witness the Queen's final decision, the fate of the human, and the future of her throne, Ryan Hale stood beside the Queen. His uniform torn but his back straight, the weight of the galaxy pressed down on him. He had never wanted to be a symbol, but now he was. The man whose words had changed everything. Queen Seraphine rose from her throne, her silver armor repaired, her crown gone. Her face carried calm determination. She looked over the crowd, her voice echoing through the entire station. Yesterday this hall was filled with fear, she said. Fear of a word, fear of a truth, fear of a single man who dared to speak what others would not. The crowd was silent. No one moved. She gestured toward Ryan. This human's honesty was called a crime, yet his words showed us what our laws had hidden for centuries. We have lived without emotion, without connection, without truth. And look where it brought us: rebellion, division, emptiness. Her violet eyes glowed softly, not with rage, but with feeling. I will no longer lead through silence, she said. I will no longer rule through fear, a counselor shouted from the balcony. You break the sacred code of the Varelian Empire. The Queen turned to him, her tone like steel. Then let the code break before we break ourselves. The entire chamber erupted in murmurs. Some cheered, others shouted. The Queen raised her hand, and the hall fell silent once more. She stepped down from her throne and stood beside Ryan. From this day forth, she declared, the human accord is born, a new path where truth will not be punished, and emotion will not be a weakness. Ryan's breath caught. He hadn't expected this. Humanity, once mocked and ignored, was now being named in a galactic treaty. The Queen's words spread across every screen, every broadcast network. From the frozen moons of Orvar to the burning cities of the Draken Empire, all heard the same message. The Queen of Varelia stood with humanity. Suddenly a burst of light filled the hall. Teleport signatures. Dozens of armored figures appeared. Their leader, General Kale of the Varelian Guard, knelt before the Queen. Your Majesty, he said, the loyal fleets have pledged to your cause. The rebellion is over. They await your command. Seraphine nodded once, her gaze firm. Then prepare them. We will rebuild not through conquest, but through understanding. As the crowd watched, something unexpected happened. The Queen turned to Ryan and extended her hand. The gesture was small, but in that galaxy, it was history. Ryan hesitated, then took her hand. The cameras captured it, the moment that would later be known as the Hand of Truth. The hall erupted in cheers, a roar that shook the glass walls. Aliens who had never spoken to each other before now stood side by side. The air vibrated with energy, a unity the galaxy had never known. But even in triumph, shadows lingered far beyond the embassy. In the black silence of deep space, unseen fleets stirred. Leaders of other empires watched the broadcast, their eyes burning with envy and fear. The Queen has chosen the humans, one hissed. Then the age of humanity begins, another replied. And we must decide, will we join them or destroy them? Back inside the embassy, Ryan looked at Seraphine. You've changed everything, he said softly. She smiled faintly. No, Captain, you did, she replied. I only chose to listen. As they stood side by side beneath the stars, the great banners of the old empire fell away, replaced by one new symbol, a silver and blue crest of two hands joined beneath a star. It would mark the beginning of a new alliance, and the end of an age of silence for centuries to come. The story would be told again and again, how one human spoke his heart without fear, and how an alien queen's response shook the entire embassy, and the galaxy itself, and somewhere far beyond the stars, a whisper of humanity's spirit echoed through the void. Truth may begin with one voice, but it can awaken a universe.